Okay, I thought I'd switch things up from Star Trek for a bit and talk a little Indiana Jones. There's a new movie coming out this year, somehow, and I'm hoping to do videos on all the Indiana Jones movies before it comes out. And we're obviously going to start with Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I don't know if I have an absolute favorite movie of all time, but if you put a gun to my head and said, pick one, it would be Raiders. I don't know why you would do that. That's pretty psychotic behavior. You could just ask me. You don't need to threaten my life over it. Don't be a psychopath. And yeah, Indiana Jones was kind of the first thing that I really got into. I hadn't seen Star Trek. I hadn't even seen Star Wars. My big thing before seeing this movie was like the Ninja Turtles. But I got the VHS tape with this cover for my birthday, I think. And probably around 1991, I think. I would have been about 7. And it blew my mind. You know, it blew my single-digit mind. And that was it. I said, I no longer want to be a Ninja Turtle. That was a ridiculous aspiration ever since my sister told me that I'm the wrong species. So now I'm going to be an archaeologist and fight Nazi Germany. And that bubble was eventually burst as well. That's not really what archaeologists do, which is tragic. But it still remains one of my favorite movies of all time, and it was obviously created by George Lucas, one of his best in my opinion. But there are still a few wacky George Lucas things that I'm going to have some questions about, so prepare for that. And let's just get into it. Raiders of the Lost Ark from 1981, directed by Steven Spielberg, starring Harrison Ford and Karen Allen. The movie opens up in South America in 1936 with a group of guys led by Indiana Jones making their way through a Peruvian jungle. And these guys are not traveling light. There's a whole group of them following Indiana Jones, and they have massive rucksacks and donkeys and shit. One of the guys gets scared off by a statue, so he's obviously got some problems he needs to work out. And I guess when he ran off, he took almost the whole crew with him, because the only guys left are Alfred Molina, you know, Dr. Octopus, and this guy. I guess all that shit they were carrying wasn't very essential. And they find a poisoned dart stuck in a tree. And we know it's poison because after Indiana Jones casually drops it, Doc Ock picks it up and tastes it. And he says, yep, that's poison. So he's a genius. And this indicates that there is some sort of dangerous tribe around. So it's pretty spooky. And kind of out of nowhere, this guy takes out a gun and points it at Indiana Jones. And Indy, for the first time, is revealed. So that's the first time we see his face. Well, in the movie. We know his face. It's Harrison Ford. That's $1 billion face. And he almost comes off like a bad guy, the way he steps out of the shadows with a grim look on his face. Anyway, the dude runs off, holding his whipped wrist. And it's just Indy and Doc Ock now. And I have no idea why he brought all these guys with him. He has a map. He seems to know where he's going. I also don't know why he trusts Doc Ock after his buddy just tried to kill him. But he does. He brings him along for the rest of the journey, where he will serve absolutely no purpose. And they find a temple entrance. They go in, and kind of randomly, there are like 4 or 5 tarantula spiders on Indy's back. He casually brushes them off. And there's about 50 more on Doc Ock's back. I don't know how the fuck this happened. And it went unnoticed this long. But whatever. Luckily, they are tarantulas, which are relatively harmless, I think. I don't know. I'm not an entomologist. And they come across their first booby trap. It's kind of a light trap. Walking into light triggers it. I don't know how the fuck that's possible. Doesn't really make sense in my brain how walking into natural sunlight triggers a trap. as though it's like a modern-day laser tripwire. And the body of Indy's old competitor is revealed. His name is Forrestal, and Indy said he was very good. He's apparently not that good, though. He's not good enough to anticipate a magic light trap. And they make their way to a big room where a golden idol is on a pedestal. And it's ridiculously shiny after all these years. It's almost like someone's been polishing it. And Doc Ock says, let us hurry. There's nothing to fear here. Which is funny because 2 seconds ago, he was pissing his pants over the dead guy that just flew out of a fucking wall. But whatever. Indy carefully makes his way to the idol, and he takes out a bag of dirt. The pedestal is weighted, and he's hoping to replace the idol with the dirt. And weirdly, he thinks it will be enough. He even takes some dirt out of the bag to make it lighter. There's no way that bag of dirt weighs just as much as that giant gold paperweight. Unless maybe it's hollow, like a piggy bank, which would be kind of cool. Anyway, it turns out it wasn't enough weight. It triggers the trap, and the whole fucking temple seems to be falling apart. They make their way out, and Doc Ock tries to get cute by offering to trade Indy's whip for the idol, so Indy can swing across this gap. He gets the idol, and then he just leaves Indy to die. I don't know why you trusted this guy. You didn't need him, but whatever. Indy jumps the distance and somehow makes it under the closing door, Geordie LaForge style. And he finds the dead body of Doc Ock. I guess he forgot about that light trap. Tragic. Indy picks up the idol, and a fucking boulder is coming down. And now, if I'm Indiana Jones, I'm tempted to just stand where I am, because if he did that, the boulder would just go right past him. But that would also be a mistake, because that would block his way out, and he'd be trapped. So it's good that he decides to make a run for it. He makes his way out, and he's surrounded by the locals, the aforementioned Poison Dart tribe. They are led by a French guy named Belloc. I don't know why. I don't know why they are listening to this French guy who just happens to speak their language. But I guess he's saying the right things because they're listening to him. And he takes the idol from Indy. He robs the grave robber, basically, is what happened here. And Indy makes a break for it. He heads towards a river where there's a propeller plane waiting for him. Only takes him about a minute to get there. So I don't know what all this shit was in the beginning of the movie with all the donkeys and the rucksacks and the group of guys that was with him. If Indy came here by plane, who the fuck were all those other people? And his pilot is named Jock. We know this because Indy screams it about 10 times. And Jock is fishing. I don't know why. What's he hoping to catch? And what would he do with it if he caught it? I mean, is he planning on strapping a catfish to the wing of his fucking propeller plane? I guess so. And Indy makes it. Didn't think he would. I would imagine that a tribe like this would probably catch him pretty easily. I mean, they hunt for a living. But whatever. I'm glad he made it. And there's a snake in the plane. Jock's pet snake, Reggie. And Indy reveals that he hates snakes, which will come into play later, as we all know. And back in the United States, we see Indy's day job, Dr. Henry Jones, Jr. He's a professor of archaeology at a college in Connecticut. And he has a bit of a Clark Kent effect going on, doesn't he? The glasses, the suit and tie. But when it's time for adventuring, he puts on the leather jacket and the fedora. And there's a lot of girl students in this class. They all seem really into the lesson, especially this freakazoid who wrote the words "love you" on her fucking eyelids. I hope Indy told the campus counselor about this, because this girl needs to get her shit together. And the bell rings, class is dismissed. One guy awkwardly leaves an apple on Indy's desk, which apparently used to be a thing that students did. I guess this guy feels like he really needs to pass this class, and he's decided to use fruit as leverage, which is a bit of a Hail Mary strategy, if we're being honest, especially when he's competing with this sort of shit. And Indy talks to his friend Marcus Brody, a museum curator. He's basically the guy who gets all the relics that Indy finds, for a price, of course. And he tells Indy that some guys from Army Intelligence want to meet with him. And one guy is Porkins from Star Wars. He really gets around. And this is where we get a massive amount of exposition, and basically the whole setup for the entire movie. And they tell Indy that Nazi soldiers have started a massive excavation in Egypt, and that they've also tried to contact Indy's old mentor, Abner Ravenwood, about some sort of headpiece and something called the Staff of Ra. And Indy surmises that the Nazis have discovered the lost city of Tanis, which is believed to be one of the possible resting places of the Lost Ark. And they wanted Ravenwood's help because he's a Tanis expert who also may be in possession of the headpiece to this Staff of Ra, which when used in a special map room in Tanis will reveal the location of a chamber called the Well of Souls, where the Ark is supposedly located. It's a lot. I also don't know how anyone knows this, but they seem to know. Marcus also says that any army that carries the Ark before it is invincible. So it's pretty dramatic. George Lucas created this, and he basically made the Ark of the Covenant into a Death Star. It's basically the holy hand grenade from Monty Python times 100. That's what's happening here. The dude loves his Death Stars. What can I say? And I never understood why the Ark is so special. It's just a crate that carried the Ten Commandments. Shouldn't that be the main attraction? The Ten Commandments? I mean, it's kind of like valuing your phone case over your phone. Raiders of the Lost Otterbox, essentially. So, they're going to let Indy go after the Ark and hopefully get some answers out of his old mentor, Abner Ravenwood. If it's a source of unspeakable power, you can't let the Nazis get their hands on it, can you? You can't let the Empire get its hands on the Death Star plans. Wait, different movie. Sorry. And Indy doesn't believe in the power of the Ark. He is kind of doing this for entirely selfish reasons. Indy also says that he doesn't believe in magic or any superstitious hocus pocus, which is kind of worth noting because chronologically, the Temple of Doom already happened. And he saw a lot of magic and a lot of hocus pocus in that shit. But whatever. He gets on a plane to Nepal to hopefully catch up with Ravenwood, and he's being followed by some Nazi bastard who reads Life magazine, apparently. And you get the traditional Indiana Jones map traveling graphic, which is nice. And in Nepal, he meets an old flame, Abner Ravenwood's daughter, Marion. She just bet a lot of money on herself to win a drinking contest, which she does. She can really hold her liquor. Indy asks for the Staff of Ra headpiece / medallion. Sometimes it's called a headpiece, sometimes it's called a medallion, whatever. And she's annoyed to see Indy because they used to bang and it was a bit of a bad breakup. And when I say she's annoyed, I might be underselling it a bit.
I need one of the pieces your father collected.
I learned to hate you in the last 10 years.
That's another thing I love about this movie. The sound effects for the punches sound like ribs breaking. It's so extreme. It's just fucking amazing. And here comes a controversial line that I think needs to be addressed. Apparently, George Lucas wanted Marion to be very young when Indy and her were together. Too young. I have no idea why he thought that would be a good idea. I'm glad he was eventually convinced otherwise, but this awkward line of dialogue remains in the movie.
I never meant to hurt you.
I was a child. I was in love. It was wrong and you knew it.
You knew what you were doing.
Now I do. This is my place. Get out.
Uncomfortable, right? Basically, the implication is that she was a teenager when Indy would have been about 25 or 30 years old, somewhere in between there. It's a problem. Now, I know people did things differently in the 1920s. I get that. But we still don't need our hero to come off like some kind of fucking prevert, do we? So, I have it in my head that that's not what happened. Karen Allen was 30 years old at the time of this movie. So 10 years ago, when they were together, she would have been about 20. And Harrison Ford would have been about 29. So it's not ideal, but at least it's a little more acceptable. I mean, what the fuck, George Lucas? Myself and other indie fans should not be tasked with rewriting shit to make it less creepy. You can also see how much I care about this character, that I'm willing to overanalyze this to try to make it less of a problem. I did math for this movie. Math. But moving on, finally. Indy asks where Abner is, and she tells him that he's dead. He expresses his condolences, and once again asks for the medallion, and he offers her $5,000 for it. He also says it's a worthless bronze medallion. I mean, if it's worthless, why are you shelling out $5,000 for it? And she takes the money, but tells Indy to come back tomorrow. Probably because she's shithoused right now and wants to think it over with a sober brain. And she also wouldn't mind making Indy wait for her for once. So Indy leaves. And it's revealed that Marion actually had the medallion headpiece around her neck this whole time, which is kind of insane because it's massive. I mean, Flavor Flav might be able to pull off wearing this thing around his neck, but that's about it. It's pretty big. And not more than a minute after Indy leaves, this guy walks in with some goons at his back. He also wants the medallion, and one of his goons has gigantic fucking eyelids. I don't know what's going on here. I had to look it up. He's a white stunt actor who had a small role in Star Wars, and you could see he doesn't have giant eyelids there. So I think they tried to make this guy look Asian. But it just looks like his fucking eyelids got stung by a couple of bees simultaneously. I just always thought that was kind of bizarre. Anyway, the lead guy's name is Toht. I think that's how you pronounce it. He's a Gestapo agent, which basically means that he's a subhuman animal, and he'll prove that with every scene that he's in. And I like to refer to him as the evil Ben Franklin, because that's basically what he looks like to me. And he gets right to the threats. He's about to kill Marion with a hot poker, when thankfully, Indiana Jones walks back into the bar. And a fight scene ensues, a massive fire starts, and Indy and Marion take care of the goons. The evil Ben Franklin dude sees Marion's medallion on the ground, and he tries to grab it, even though it's on fire. Now, when you or me accidentally touch something that is blazing hot, we tend to let go of it immediately, right? But not evil Ben Franklin. Oh no. He fucking grips this thing even tighter. So tight, in fact, that it's revealed later on in the film that he branded his hand with the design of this fucking thing. These fucking Nazis really are backwards. And he runs off holding his mangled hand, and Marion and Indy escape the bar. She says she's teaming up with Indy until she gets her $5,000 back. So, with the medallion, they're on their way to Cairo. And once they get there, they meet Indy's old pal Sallah, played by Gimli. Sallah is a very talented excavator. He digs stuff up, essentially. And the Germans have hired him to help dig for the Lost Ark, although he says his services are entirely inconsequential, since they have hired or shanghaied just about everyone in Egypt. And you get the impression that he wasn't exactly given the option to say no to this gracious job offer. Sallah tells Indy that the Nazis have found the map room just a few days ago, and they have not one brain among them, except for a French archaeologist named Beloche, a.k.a. Belloc. So Indy's old rival is working with the Nazis. But the good news is they aren't going to be able to use the map room to find the Ark without the medallion. Then Marion and Indy go for a walk through the streets of Cairo, and they get attacked by some bad guys. And they were probably pretty easy to follow, because Marion's outfit is kind of insane. She's wearing bright red Aladdin pants, for fuck's sake. Anyway, Indy does most of the heavy lifting in the fight, of course, but Marion holds her own pretty well, and she can be seen in the background beating a man over the head with what looks like a canister of olive oil. I don't know if olive oil is very common in Egypt or not. I hope it is. I mean, I never leave the house without it. And the fight continues. Marion is on the run on her own. She ends up hitting a dude over the head with a frying pan. So we got olive oil and a frying pan. A few more things and we could maybe have a decent meal out of this. And Marion ends up hiding in a basket, and a monkey rats her out to the Nazis. That's right. There's a monkey in this movie that is a Nazi. It's fucking mental. So the bad guys take her away in the basket. And Indy squares off with this scimitar-wielding douchebag. So there you go. Don't bring a sword to a gunfight. And I would love to ask George Lucas about this. I mean, why is it okay for Indy to shoot first, but not Han Solo? And Han shot a character that actually had a gun. Then again, maybe that's a bad idea to ask him that, because he would want to go back and give the sword guy some kind of CGI bazooka or some shit so that it's okay for Indy to shoot him. Anyway, Marion screams for help. Indy follows. She says, "You can't do this to me. I'm an American," which is more than a little delusional. But we'll give her a pass. It's a stressful situation. And it seems as though they are going to put Marion in a truck that has a comical amount of high explosives on it. And Indy shoots the driver, the truck flips over, and it explodes, seemingly killing Marion as well as her assailants. Tragic. I mean, tragic? Question mark? And Indy is bummed out, so he decides to get drunk with the fascist monkey. And Belloq pays him a visit and tells him that he's so close to finding the Ark. He also says that it's a transmitter, a radio for speaking to God. I don't know what gives him that impression, but apparently this glorified shipping crate is both a Death Star and a neat little CB radio, which is nice. And Indy has a pretty badass response to this.
You want to talk to God? Let's go see him together. I've got nothing better to do.
Uncle Indy, come back home now!
Next time, Indiana Jones, it'll take more than children to save you.
So apparently Sallah sent his 900 kids into this bar to rescue Indy from Nazi gunmen. It's a bold move. Father of the Year right there. And Belloq has managed to partially replicate the medallion headpiece, and he used it in the map room. It's implied heavily that he did this by making a fake headpiece based on evil Ben Franklin's fucked up hand. But the true height of the staff is revealed on the opposite side of the medallion, which Belloq obviously doesn't have. So the location revealed in the map room wasn't accurate, and the Germans are digging in the wrong place. And the fascist monkey dies from some bad dates. We've all been there. So Sallah and Indy get a staff that's the appropriate height. They sneak past the German soldiers somehow and go to the map room. Indy uses the staff with the headpiece, and the sun reveals the location of the Well of Souls. And on the way out of the camp, Indy walks into a random tent for seemingly no reason, and he discovers Marion, alive and well, and tied up. I mean, it's a wild stroke of luck that he just stumbled upon her like this. And he's about to free her, but he decides he can't right now because the Germans will start combing the desert for them. So he leaves her behind for the time being, and he goes to the Well of Souls location with Sallah and his crew, and they start digging. And it looks like it's no more than 50 yards from the Germans, so it seems kind of insane they plan to dig the Ark up and escape with it unnoticed. And they manage to find an opening to this massive chamber, and the place is filled with an insane amount of snakes. I mean, what the hell are these snakes doing here? What are they eating? It's the biggest snake orgy in history. It's madness. Anyway, Indy drops some torches to part the sea of snakes. He's scared because he hates snakes, obviously. And he climbs down a rope with Sallah. They find the Ark. It's in a big stone box. So it's a box in a box, essentially. They pull it up and out of the chamber. But the sun is coming up. And Belloq notices the dig site. And he shows up with a bunch of bad guys while Indy is still inside. And evil Ben Franklin throws Marion into the hole. And they seal them in. Tragic. But it's actually not as much of a problem as you'd think, because Indy just kicks over this giant fucking pharaoh and breaks down a wall, and they escape. Marion ends up running into a skeleton party, which is kind of insane. These skeletons are perfectly preserved. Some of them look fairly fresh. And they also seem to be screaming. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But I'm not going to lie. This scene scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. As an adult, it's just kind of silly. And Indy just basically pushes this giant brick out of the way, and they're out, which is pretty wild when you think about it. I mean, it would have been nice if they could have just gone in that way. You know, it would have saved them a lot of digging. And they end up in front of an airfield, which is weird, because there's nothing like this anywhere near the dig site. And Indy tries to hijack a German plane. I think he believes the Ark is going to be loaded onto this plane. But it's not a cargo plane. It's a bomber. I mean, what are they going to do? They're going to strap it to the wing, just like Jock was going to do with that fish? But anyway, it doesn't matter because nothing goes as planned. A fight breaks out with this big motherfucker. And I have no idea why Indy just doesn't shoot him. You know, just like he did the sword guy. I mean, I suppose he could be worried that gunfire will attract attention, which of course it would. But once he starts getting his ass kicked, you'd think he would just shoot him. I mean, he bites him. He throws dirt in his eyes. This is not exactly Marcus of Queensberry rules. But either way, it's not a problem because Indy hulks up a bit and this guy gets chopped into bits by the propeller of the plane.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
And of course there's a gasoline spill, and Indy and Marion manage to escape before the whole airfield blows up, and their strides are almost perfectly in sync, which I always found weirdly satisfying. And surely that's enough action for one movie, right? Well, no, because the Ark has been loaded onto a truck headed for Cairo, and Indy is going to hijack the shit out of this truck, despite the fact that it's surrounded by a fucking battalion of German soldiers. And it goes pretty well, at least until they start climbing on the outside of the truck like a bunch of cockroaches. And one of them shoots Indy in the arm, and the other guy climbs on top of the truck and swings into the driver's side window like fucking Tarzan. And he throws Indy through the damn windshield. Did this guy take the super soldier serum? Is this the Red Skull? Is this Captain Germany or some shit? What is happening right now? And of course, this is the famous scene where Indy climbs underneath the truck and uses his whip to drag himself behind it. You'd think he would be absolutely shredded from the chest down from this. And maybe he is, because that would explain why he's so pissed off when he climbs back into the truck. He uses this guy's skull as a mallet. He smashes it into the dashboard about a half a dozen times, and then he chucks him to the windshield and runs his silly ass over. Rest in pieces. And Indy drives off and escapes. Although he probably should have just pulled over and popped Belloc and these three other sons of bitches. You know, Clemenza style. Because they do chase him. But the locals graciously hide the truck. And there's a brief scene where evil Ben Franklin clearly isn't there. He's supposed to be, but it's just like his hat propped up in the seat, and the actor isn't there. I can only guess that he had diarrhea that day, as most of the actors did at one point or another. And Sallah arranges for the Ark to be loaded onto a cargo ship, and Indy and Marion are finally getting out of Dodge. And Indy says the famous line, "It's not the years, honey, it's the mileage," which to me gets more relatable every day. And Indy and Marion kind of hook up. This movie gets pretty horny at times, but Indy falls asleep, which I love. He's not Superman, he's been through a load of shit, and he's just too tired to even bang his girlfriend. And of course, the next day, the Germans track them down in a submarine and board the cargo ship. They take the Ark and Marion over to the sub. Belloc has a pretty strong interest in Marion. I don't know why. I guess because he sees Marion as a possession, and as he said earlier, there's nothing Indy can possess that he can't take away. What can I say? He's a piece of shit. And Indy manages to hide somewhere on the ship, and the captain claims he killed Jones in order to protect him. And I guess the Nazis buy it, because they're shoving off with no further questions. And somehow Indy swims over to the sub and rides on the outside of it for miles. This is probably the craziest thing in the whole movie, and any thought expended on it will only give you a migraine. So it's best just to move on. They head to a remote island to open the Ark. And they march with their little Nazi flags and shit. I don't know what for. There's nobody else on this island. Who are you showing off for? And Indy shows up. He tries to get Marion back by threatening the Ark with a rocket launcher, but Belloq calls his bluff, and a fucking fly goes right into his mouth. Holy shit. The actor, Paul Freeman, is not even bothered. He plows right through with a fly in his mouth, and he nails his lines. A true professional. So Indy is taken captive. He's tied to a post with Marion. Belloq opens the Ark in ritualistic fashion, and it seems like there's nothing in it but sand. And then scary demons come out and melt everyone's fucking faces. And evil Ben Franklin is not spared. I mean, not that he would be, but, I mean, it would be weird if that happened. He's a piece of shit. And Indy and Marion survive because they kept their eyes shut. Smart move. And I have no fucking clue how they're getting off this island. But they obviously do. Because back in the States, Porkins says they have top men working on the Ark right now, but he won't elaborate any further, much to the frustration of Indiana Jones. But he goes for a drink with Marion, and it's a happy ending for those two. And then we see the Ark being crated and buried in a warehouse filled with all sorts of dirty secrets, never to be seen again. Except for a brief moment in the Crystal Skull. But there's no reason to talk about that. And that's the end. Great fucking movie. Indiana Jones is such a great character because he's kind of a reluctant hero. He never starts off intending to save the day, but that's always what he ends up doing. He started off just wanting to get the Ark for entirely selfish reasons, and he eventually learns to put that aside. He realizes Marion is more important, and he becomes more concerned with saving her than anything else. He also doesn't believe in the power of the Ark, but by the end, he has to swallow his pride and start believing, which is kind of a thing he does in all the movies. He's skeptical until his life is on the line, and then he becomes a believer. And there's also this dumbass idea made popular by the dumbass show, The Big Bang Theory, and it says that Indiana Jones has no impact on the outcome of the story. That if he had just stayed home, the Nazis would have found the Ark, opened it, and died, which is pretty ridiculous. First of all, they might never have found the Ark at all, if not for Indiana Jones, and even if they did find it, they probably would have had to track down Marion, and they probably would have killed her. So, he saved her life. And who's to say the power of the Ark couldn't still be harnessed by the Nazis, even after Belloq died? It's just an oversimplification that ignores everything. It also ignores Indy's character arc, no pun intended, as though that's not important. I know a lot of people love The Big Bang Theory, and I don't want this to devolve into a review of that show, but to me it's trash. It's anti-comedy for a lot of reasons. You know, you got a social nitwit with a gibberish catchphrase. He says, Zabingo, or whatever the fuck. And then the laugh track comes on, and everyone thinks it's funny. Just fucking stupid to me. But whatever. And I should probably wrap this up. I've been babbling for a long time, as usual. Thanks for sticking around if you made it this far. And let me know how you feel about Raiders of the Lost Ark. And if you liked what I had to say, keep an eye out, because like I said, I'm going to be doing videos on all of the Indiana Jones movies, even the Crystal Skull. But until next time, take it easy.